Bye, Maria.
Wow, no one has left quicker.
She's literally running away.
Well, you know, Maria was a little anxious about doing, but I thought I'm going to be honest, performed like a champ.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest as well. I enjoyed just those few minutes of talking to her far more than I ever have addressing either of you.
Very true. And
Yeah.
the show's probably going to go downhill just from that point.
Okay, well, now what's that sound, Brandon? That's all of our listeners not listening anymore.
Just shutting the door.
Yep. Doug really knows how to sell. Well, guys, we did indeed listen to Why Won't You Date Me? Nicole Byer. She's a comedian, as Maria pointed out. She appears on lots of other podcasts. And as Brandon hinted at, Doug, you have already heard her once on a podcast.
Yes.
That was the episode of How'd This Get Made, which they reviewed. I'll help you, Doug.
No,
It's
I know.
okay.
Bloodsport.
There you go.
That's
Now,
right.
did you like her on that episode? Do you remember?
So I want to give you my favorite line of hers that she said.
Okay.
And see if you remember it.
Sure.
And she's like, I want to see him split into my pussy.
That sounds like Nicole
guess I
Byer.
should've
I'll
cut you
be
off.
honest.
Yeah.
Hey, Doug, was that also your favorite line of the episode?
Nope. Sure wasn't. I do. I mean, I don't think while I was listening to Why Won't You Date Me,
Right.
I don't think I made that connection that she was on that episode.
Sure. I mean, Maria was there live and in person, and she had forgotten. So
That
it's
is
not,
true.
it's not surprising.
Thanks
We've listened
to
to a lot of
John,
stuff.
she was there live. Yes.
That wasn't even the point I was making. But yeah,
No,
Well, I just
you
was
know
trying
what?
to.
It
I was
wasn't
just
the point.
trying to preempt
Doug-
John from making that
Doug,
point.
thanks for bringing it up again.
Sure.
So I mean, so obviously you weren't tempered or educated by her previous experiences. John, you've listened to her on other things before you listened to this podcast.
Absolutely. And, of course, I've watched her on a couple seasons of Nailed It, the hilarious show on Netflix.
And I was just introduced to Nailed It over the holidays. Actually, I think John and I did watch an
okay.
episode together while you were at the house.
Yes.
So you have seen Nailed It, which she hosts.
Yes.
Okay.
Which I think is extremely funny. Not just her, but that show. Is
And you
hilarious.
didn't recognize Nicole Byer from the show as the person who was hosting this podcast? That did never...
Because you probably
I
know
didn't
by her
recognize-
face, not her
The only
name.
thing I didn't recognize is that she was on the episode of How Did This Get
got
Made?
it. Okay.
Got it.
So you did know her from
Yes.
those... Okay.
Yes.
All right,
Which-
guys. Well, I mean, I think we've clearly established what Doug did and did not know. But yes.
The thing that's important to me is that from those previous experiences, did you
Right.
think that this show would follow the path that it did? Or that the
Well,
content?
I mean, no, I would say that I was not expecting it to be as raunchy
Okay.
Good.
as it was. You know, I would say this is probably one of the, rare occasions other than, like on satellite radio, I'll listen to comedy stations and, sometimes you get a comedian doing stand up that's, raunchy, but
really
I think
blue,
it's
yeah.
fairly infrequent that you listen to a woman talk openly about sexual needs, and which was fine. It was funny, and it was also refreshing that she's so open about it. I'm probably more in line with Maria, where I think you guys know I'm not very
It's not something you personally want to discuss.
Yeah,
very
exactly.
openly.
But I have no problem with other people doing it, and I definitely didn't have any problem listening to this podcast, which contained a lot of content about that. I think she's both funny and open about it all, so it was great.
Very much so. No, John, did you, because you know her from the Doughboys podcast, did you
Right.
know that she was going to discuss these kind of things? Have you listened to this podcast before?
I've never listened to this podcast.
Okay.
I actually didn't know it existed. I was excited to hear that it did. None of it surprised me because other than Nailed It, which is for a particular audience, I think
Sure.
they want it to be relatively family friendly.
Yeah.
But just about anybody can watch it. I have actually never heard Nicole Byer on any podcast ever not talk about wanting to get laid, needing dick, frequently asking the people she is podcasting with, the males, if they'll have sex with her.
Really? Someone show me their dick! As I'm rubbing Nick Weiger.
So I would have been shocked if it wasn't about this when I heard it was called Why Won't You Date Me?
Sure.
I think I've heard her scream that sentence on another podcast before.
You probably have.
So this fell right in line with my expectations. Doug, these were obviously just a few months apart. There is no old, way back episode of the show. It's only a couple years old. Which episode did you listen to first? The one with Frank Gillespie or the one with Justin Noble where she talks about her epic trip to the Burbank airport just to go Guy Fieri's burger place.
Right. Yeah, I took them in numerical order, so I listened to the Bumble episode first.
Frank Gillespie, right?
Yeah.
What'd you think?
It was good. I'm only vaguely familiar with Bumble just because we have Candace and I have a friend who has used it.
Yeah.
To date.
Sure.
And so I've been exposed to it. I personally, obviously, don't use any dating apps.
No, dating apps
And
did
I'm not saying
exist
that just because my
time
wife
we
is in the room.
Right. No, that'd be
That is
super
true.
awkward,
It would,
for everybody.
especially for the Valentine's Day episode.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, but it does raise a good question. Let's not make any assumptions here. Candace, do you currently use any dating apps?
I'm on that one.
Grinder.
Yeah.
Yes, that's no.
You're going to be profoundly disappointed. Tinder, okay. So 50% of the relationship not on it. But by the way, very admirable that you're not, Doug. And I think it's a statement of how happy you are in your relationship.
Absolutely.
Now, again, our listeners this may not come immediately to mind, but if they're following along, they'll know you've been married to my wonderful sister for enough years that even before you met, it would have been virtually impossible for either of you to be on dating apps because there were no apps at that time. Right?
Well, unless Al Gore hadn't invented the internet.
That is correct. He had not.
Only through pagers would you be able to you'd have to send beeps. I'm sure there were beep codes.
Oh, yeah.
Back then.
Oh, the number of
I
beep
wanna
codes
date you.
I got. You got it, yeah.
Code numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And then they mentioned in that episode, something Riot. Is that an app? Is that a...
I am blissfully ignorant to a lot of the... I was actually also never
That's
part
my
of
question.
the app game.
How many apps were referenced that you didn't know of?
So...
Scruff?
Scruff I didn't know of.
Okay.
I knew Grindr because a
Sure.
very good friend of mine, Vincent, met his husband, Andrew, on Grindr.
Right.
And they've told me that story. And so that actually from Justin Noble's
Like
episode where he
Justin
talks
Noble,
about he
yeah.
met his husband on Grindr. And so that's
Right.
something that's familiar. But all the other seemingly specifically gay minded apps I had no awareness of.
Right.
But I've heard people talk about Tinder and Hinge and Bumble and all these things because a lot of my
Right.
friends are single and they're using these apps in a big city like Los Angeles
Sure.
to try to find people.
And although you're married now, it's a recent marriage, but having known you for, well over a decade, I think I know the answer that it's no. You've never been on one either, correct?
I have not.
Okay.
There might have been like one day
Right.
in a period of
Some
time
desperate
before
period.
Maria, yes. And
Some nadir of
I was like, oh, this is
desperation.
terrible. And I turned it off and went away
Sure.
from it. And
I mean, it is a very, very, very different way of potentially meeting others, learning about others,
Right.
particularly making decisions about your interest in others. That is unlike anything else in history. It really is. It kind of commoditizes human beings. It's a lot like,
Sure.
deciding what you want to buy on Amazon or something along those lines. But also, millions of people are using them. Obviously, lovely Nicole's one of those people.
Yeah.
She's on she said she has a folder
Oh.
to organize all of her dating
so
apps.
Raya is what it's called, not
Yes.
Riot.
Right. No, I know.
I think you said.
Right.
I think you said
I said-
Riot.
No, I wasn't
He
the one
said
who
Riot.
said it.
And I hit the microphone like an
Right.
idiot. Sorry, everyone listening at home. So
Oh,
Raya.
I'll try to edit that.
So
Okay.
Raya is an app for famous people. It's Tinder for famous people specifically.
Okay.
Famous and rich people.
So question to
and
both
so you
of
get
you.
vetted.
Do you feel you're a dick if you use Raya? Because you're making a choice on your own. It's not like it's assigned to you going, I am a famous person, so B, I should be on a famous person app.
No, I think that so I've listened to multiple episodes because Maria and I both share an enjoyment of this show.
Right.
Not to the same level that Maria listens to it, but I have listened to quite a few, and she's talked about the process.
Yeah.
And many times, she even talks about it in this, where people will match with her or try to get on dates with her
No, she
because
talks
they
about
know
it a
that she's
lot.
on television.
She talks
And
about it all the
so
time,
I
yes.
think that Raya, the purpose of it is to
Weed those
eliminate,
people
weed out people who are there just to be star fuckers, or they're just, like she talks about how somebody gives her a script.
I went on a date with a dude who then sent me his like a script, and I was like, why
Yeah.
did you do that? And he was like, I don't know, I just want you to read it, let me know if what your thoughts were on it. And I was like, we've only been out twice, I can't help you.
That's a move.
And so I think that it serves a purpose. It's sort of like, I remember reading about there's a famous matchmaker, and you pay this woman tens of thousands
Sure,
of dollars
right.
to match you up with other high flying or well-heeled people. And so I think that Raya is like the app version
So is it
of
just
a matchmaker.
wealthy or famous?
I think it's wealthy or famous.
Okay.
I think that you have to meet a minimum level of one of the two.
All right. Well, of course, the problem with something like Raya, although you might avoid someone who's just looking to advance their career, you are guaranteed, if you're just using an app like Raya, to not meet quote-unquote normal people.
Right.
So if you're like, this person's actually a wonderful person. They had no idea who I was, and they learned on our second or third date. I told them, you're never going to meet that person because of that. It's just either wealthy or notable people.
Right, that's certainly true.
Yeah. Well, something to think about. I mean, Doug, I just pray to God you never have to be on Raya or any other dating app again. Something's gone terribly wrong if you are.
I
Now-
hope that this podcast becomes big enough that one of the three of us could conceivably be on it,
Right.
but don't.
But choose not to.
yes, exactly.
Right.
Well, have never had the opportunity to.
We'll find out. Episode 50, guys, right after we skydive.
Oh, no.
Now, Doug, what did you think about? You got a real insider's look into it. I mean, she was actively so. Episode 34 with Fran Gillespie is called "Opening Bumble Messages," but keep in mind, all of you who listen to episode 51 know that she also dives deep into her direct messaging on whatever other apps that she's using. I think some of them were Bumble as well. What did you think about getting that insight into how people communicate? Let me ask you another question on top of this one. Have you had any friends who are really deep into this app world and have told you either their positive stories or their horror stories?
No real. I don't think I've had anyone tell me either, to be honest.
Okay.
Other than just no. I who knows? Maybe because
All right.
obviously I've been introduced to it, and some of the people I work with I know use I think Tinder and Bumble, but
Right.
I don't think.
They're not sharing their experiences.
Well,
with
and
you.
I don't. The people I work with, I don't think I'm necessarily that close with
Okay.
them.
Doug doesn't ask them questions. He doesn't want to know about
He
their
doesn't
lives.
want to know the people he
Yeah,
works
no,
with.
of course not.
I don't want to ask them personal questions. No,
No, of course not. Doug,
I stop
don't
at how
blame
was your
you.
day?
Yeah, sure. John, do you have friends that...
Doug, build that wall. Well, I do. So up until, I'm going to say 2012, I've never been, we have now 3 males at this table who have never been on dating apps in any meaningful way. Quite literally at all, it sounds like, other than maybe your one morning on it.
I had one panicked oh, maybe this is a good idea. And then
Sure.
no, this is terrible.
And
then I met Maria and then it didn't matter.
Right, exactly, which I think is a very good thing. But in 2012, I began dating a young lady who, for I think roughly a year, had been on and off, maybe Match and eHarmony.
Okay.
And because I had no experience in those worlds, I'd never dated that way. I'm, someone who's dated a lot, and it's had probably at this point a troubling number of monogamous, long-term monogamous relationships.
We're all concerned.
Hey, we as well.
We have people on Jump Watch just in case.
Thank God for everyone. Now that I've thought about it, also planning on shooting myself on the way down,
just to make sure.
Right.
You know, if you're not anything, you're thorough, John.
Exactly.
That's what I
Also,
love about
think
you.
about how amazing it would be for the people who were present. They'd never stop telling that story, and they're like, "Oh my God." The point where they're like, and this guy, I'm looking at him and he jumps off the building, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, you saw this?" He's like, No, dude, this is half the story.
Just wait.
He straight shot himself in the head
the gun
on
out.
the way down. Yeah. So anywho, by
total baller move.
Yeah.
it is. I
If
mean,
he
it's
lived through
badass.
it, man.
Yeah.
Oh, he'd walk away with so many
I agree.
accolades.
Also, hard
kudos.
for family and friends to really be sad about it afterwards. Yes, you're not there anymore. They're sad about the experiences they won't get to share, but they're going to love telling that story. People kind of, I think, would nod their head in admiration, like, no shit, that's pretty cool.
But we are not condoning or promoting suicide.
No, we're not at all.
we're
It's
not.
a huge problem.
Don't do it.
Mental health issues in this country and depression. Absolutely, guys. However awesome it sounds,
However fucking cool it would be.
It's not, right.
You know what I've
Don't
always thought about is you tape your head to your hands.
Yes.
And then you take a razor wire and you cut your own head off, and then it looks like you pulled your head off.
that's amazing.
Which would be awesome.
And again, something we don't condone.
Do
at
not
all
do
at this
it.
Show.
Don't
Yep.
do it, yeah.
But it would be fucking cool to see it.
Hey, I just
Definitely don't
realized
do it.
that I actually do know somebody who met their spouse on.
Oh,
I think
okay.
it was, I want to say Tinder, but it could have been like eHarmony also
Okay.
that are still married and have all that stuff.
I mean, with the prevalence of the use of dating apps,
Yeah.
I think those stories are all
Well,
over the place now.
And I got to say, I think one of the things I've said throughout the years, especially, you know, to younger people that I work with or, you know, I've become acquainted with is, you know, obviously Candy and I started dating before any of that. And
Before
living
rocks.
here, basically, you